Good morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 24th of May. Welcome to Alaska Weather, and as always, you can check your forecast anytime at 1-800-472-0391, toll-free number for all of Alaska. You can also check your forecast for the next 7 days at weather.gov/Alaska. You'll be taken to your local forecast office when you click the website there, and you can find links to the satellite and radar pictures as well as current conditions across the region, PIREPs, and certainly the METARs and the TAF forecast for all of you aviators out there. Of course, the links to the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit are located there, as well as information from the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center, still monitoring breakup across the North Slope, but every other rivers across Alaska are looking pretty good at this point. If there's a little bit of a shake or a quake, make sure you check in with tsunami.gov, and links to the National Tsunami Warning Center are right there. So a quick click off of the weather.gov/Alaska page will take you to the Tsunami Warning Center's information about how to be prepared and certainly how to monitor for more information should something occur. If you can't find what you're looking for, feel free to email me anytime, and I love seeing your pictures from your part of Alaska. Sometimes we'll be able to feature those right here on the show, so if you do have a snapshot of something beautiful or just kind of an average day in your part of Alaska, we'd love to see it. Just email that to david.snider@noaa.gov or let us know how the weather is in your area. As always, any questions I can help you with, happy to do so anytime. Let's take a look at the breakup map now, and again, you'll find this on the Alaska Pacific River Forecast page. Up across the North Slope, we're still seeing some ice there around the Sag River, certainly around areas in the North Slope up toward Kuparik River and around Colville. Those areas there still looking at kind of an average or perhaps a slightly earlier than normal breakup period, but that's where things stand now. Everything else south of the Brooks Range is wide open, so good news there. Water is moving. However, slightly higher than normal river levels will continue in places like the Chena, and so watch for debris in the rivers there with extra rainfall and convection and thunderstorms falling in this region. We would expect to see some of the river access points maybe unusable as we go through the next period or so of 3 to 4 days, which would include, of course, the holiday weekend. So be extra careful out there with extra water in the rivers and certainly some extra debris and potential for thunder and lightning there as you're out there on the water. As always, be careful. Here's a look at the visible satellite picture now, and you can see the clouds bubbling up across the central and eastern interior, especially across western Canada, where we're getting a little more heat this time of the year now with the increased sun. The daylight hours there are really hitting the interior hard. Temperatures have been soaring into the 60s in some cases there, with what we call a thermal trough, or an area of high heat compared to everything else. It helps to bubble up the clouds and the moisture in the atmosphere and turn that into showers and thunderstorms at times. We'll see more of that as we go into Friday, and again an increase probably as we head into Saturday. Across the Gulf, an area of low pressure seen here. You can see the spiraling shape there. We'll start up the loop one more time, and you can watch this kind of twist in on itself. The surge of cloud cover here is something to keep an eye on, especially if you're in central and southern parts of Southeast. We expect that this will bring us a better chance of rainfall as we head into your Friday and Saturday. And some of this may be moderate to occasionally heavy at times. Not looking for any flooding issues right now, but this will certainly bring a wetter period of weather as we head into, once again, that 3 to 4 day weekend, as it were, for many folks in Southeast. Out across southern parts of the Bering Sea, another wave of low pressure here. You can pick out that spiraling shape once again, the counterclockwise flow showing up on the infrared satellite picture now is what we're looking at. And these waves are bringing in some rainfall across the eastern chain and into the Alaska Peninsula, but not with the veracity, the tenacity, or the precipitation of what we were talking about across parts of Southeast. So there may be a little more wind with this than anything else. Out across the south and west, spotty cloud cover there, a little bit of fog once again across parts of Southwest earlier today. Also seeing some of that across the Kotzebue Sound region, and flurries across the North Slope. Areas of low clouds, patchy fog, and flurries continue around the northern part of the Chukchi Coast all the way through the Beaufort Sea coast. And don't be surprised to see that continue as we head through the next several days. Here's our low pressure chart now. We'll call it the low pressure chart. It's really just a surface chart, but there's several areas of low pressure on it, and it just doesn't seem to quit. This has been a pretty regular pattern for us the last several weeks. Low pressure in the southern Bering at 996 millibars, low in the central Gulf at 1,000 millibars. Here's that slug of rain that's forming across the eastern side of the frontal boundary in the Gulf. And then our low pressure system here that's mainly forming due to the heating of the day. And With that, we have widely scattered showers and thunderstorms developing, mainly across the central and eastern interior, but don't be surprised to see those developing in the upper Kuskokwim as we go through the afternoon. Up north, we've got our pockets of flurries and areas of patchy fog, some of that extending into the Kotzebue Sound region. As we get through tonight, we'll see that band of moisture reach into parts of southeastern Alaska. This won't be wall-to-wall rain all the way across the north and western Gulf. It'll probably be a little more concentrated here in southeast with some breaks once you get west of Prince William Sound. Watch for periods of showers across the Alaska Peninsula and certainly on the interior as well as you get into and north of Bristol Bay to Lake Iliamna, into the upper Kuskokwim, and into the central interior. Watch for more showery weather, and probably some lightning strikes there will continue into the early evening at least through the upper Yukon and maybe even the upper Tanana. Low pressure across northern Canada is keeping some light snow possible for places like AKwx, but that should be fairly limited. To the west, though, a better chance of just flurries and some patchy fog and low decks of clouds, with fog possible again around Kotzebue Sound. You'll notice there is a ridge building out west, signs of hope perhaps for a pattern change. Right now it doesn't really look like it. It looks like this will break down fairly quickly. However, it will give more of a northerly flow for the central and eastern chain and probably break up some of the clouds, at least across the western coast. But the main feature is still low pressure, that southerly flow pushing moisture into the north and western Gulf and southeastern Alaska, with a widely scattering of showers and thunderstorm activity across the interior and even parts of southwestern Alaska, though most of that will be in the upper Kuskokwim, it looks like. Into the Noatak and Kobuk valleys there in the northern Koyukuk, watch for showers and storms potentially there on Friday. I think you'll see a better chance on Saturday. Up north, flurries are still in your forecast from Wainwright eastward toward Barrow, Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse and AKwx, still just on the fringe around Demarcation Point, seeing some light snow. A lot of that's really going to try and stay over in the Canadian side. As we get into Saturday, we still have our ridge that's trying to hold on to the bearing, but it looks like this is going to drop southward as we get into the holiday weekend, and the focus will once again be low pressure across the Gulf of Alaska. This at 989 millibars, pushing that front into places like Yakutat, all the way into Juneau and the Lynn Canal and parts of the Clarence Strait. And you'll notice we're using 3 dots there for rainfall, not just the 2. 2 being more of a moderate rainfall, this approaching kind of a heavier rainfall. So during the day time on Saturday, don't be surprised to get a decent soaking there. If you're in places like Petersburg down toward Hoonah, it looks like Craig, Ketchikan, Klawak, places like that will at least have an opportunity for a little bit more of a soaker, maybe even a southeast soaker, which isn't just your standard Alaska soaker, of course. Across the interior there, once again, the upper Tanana, the upper Yukon, looking at the opportunity for a more widespread shower and thunderstorm activity. And some of that will likely be found a little bit closer to the southwestern regions of Alaska, with showers over Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. Prince William Sound may start to see some slightly drier weather, but there will be rain in the region. It just may break up a little bit more of its heading more to the north and west. We're still under the influence of that colder high pressure system across the Arctic, and that will bring us more of that onshore flow, especially for the Beaufort Seacoast. So watch for some low clouds, watch for some flurries there, but the weather overall is trying to warm up here. So the risk of snowfall is slowing down, but certainly still possible. Out across the western Bering, we've got another surge of moisture and warmer weather coming into the western Bering Sea. Nothing big to write home about just yet, but like I said, this ridge of high pressure here will be very short-lived compared to the overall unsettled period that we seem to be stuck in as a state. Here's a look at temperatures there for Friday morning. Notice southeast stays fairly mild, low to mid 40s for many there. Prince William Sound anywhere around 40 degrees or so to the upper 30s in the upper Susitna, and the lower 40s around Kodiak Island. All in all, slightly mild, I would say. For temps in the Copper River Basin, looking for readings above freezing but still in the 30s. The interior should expect temperatures cooling off to about 40 degrees around the middle Tanana Valley. Upper 30s around Eagle and Northway. Lower 40s as you get out toward Tanana. South and western coastal regions probably in the mid to upper 30s. Nome expecting temps around 34 overnight, and below freezing for the North Slope, of course, teens and 20s there. With places like Kivalina hovering near 33. Bristol Bay temps closer to 40 degrees, Kodiak 42, and the Chain, and St. Paul and St. George also looking at temps in the upper 30s to about 40. High temperatures for your Friday afternoon, closing in on the upper 50s and lower 60s again for the interior. Fort Yukon, one of the warm spots at 64. Southeast, look for highs in the lower to mid 50s with rainfall. Prince William Sound in the low 50s and upper 50s to low 60s around the Susitna Valley and Parks Highway system all the way southward toward Homer at 54, 47 in Kodiak. Southwest, look for temps closing in on 60 degrees around King Salmon and Dillingham. Nunivak Island 41. Unalakleet close to 50 degrees, 42 in Nome, Shishmaref 33. St. Lawrence Island, Gamble, and Savunga just above freezing there, just by a little bit. 43 in St. Paul and upper 40s for the Alaska Peninsula and the Chain. Overnight lows Saturday morning will stay mild across the interior, 40s for many there. The YK Delta in the 30s and 40s, 42 in Kodiak. Lower 40s for southeast. The North Slope cooling off once again into the low 20s. South Central, lower 40s for you. Dutch Harbor and Unalaska, a cool 38 with a high of 44 there. 41 in St. Paul on Saturday. Mid to upper 60s for many in the interior. Eagle and Northway, fairly mild. Looks like temps in the upper 50s to about 60 for South Central. 53 in Homer, 54 around Whittier there, and about 58 degrees for Anchorage. Upper 50s for Kenai. Looks like a nice weekend there. Southwest, look for temperatures in the 40s and 50s. Nunivak Island, 39. Bethel closer to 53 degrees. St. Paul and St. George in the low 40s and mid 50s for many in southeast, with the North Slope again holding on to temps in the upper 20s. Let's take a quick check of your climate outlook as we go ahead toward June the 7th. 8 to 14 days out. Looks like warmer than average temperatures are possible for the north and western parts of Alaska and Southwest, with cooler than average weather possible across South Central. No big signal for Southeast. Drier than normal weather across the central and eastern interior, but a signal for above normal precipitation is possible in western Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather now. IFR conditions are expected to hold across the North Slope and all the way across the Arctic coast into Kotzebue Sound. Don't be surprised to see some fog there, as there's still some very wet air and cold air coming across the Sound. Look for St. Paul and St. George to start up with IFR conditions, and around Kodiak City and Kodiak Island, especially the northern half and into the Gulf. Look for some widespread IFR there. MVFR for parts of the central and eastern interior. Southeastern Alaska, most of the Chain and the Alaska Peninsula. And as we go into the afternoon, you'll see those IFR conditions will kind of mix out a little bit. Should see some improvements, especially for the North Slope and areas across the Bering Sea. But you'll notice that MVFR remains for southeast and parts of Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, and we're still dealing with IFR conditions close to Kodiak Island. We're also going to watch for convection to fire up. Afternoon and early evening thunderstorms will still be possibilities as we head into Friday afternoon. Look for IFR to return to parts of Kotzebue Sound as we head into Saturday morning. Widespread IFR once again for most of the Beaufort Seacoast and at least the northern half of the Chukchi Coast. IFR conditions through part of the Copper River Basin, especially the upper end and into the higher terrain and northern sections of southeast, with MVFR for southern and central parts of the outer coast of southeast. MVFR to start Kodiak Island again, and IFR expected to be widespread for the Bering Sea as well as the central and eastern chain. By the afternoon on Saturday, IFR holds from St. Matthew all the way to the Pribilofs and points westward through the Bering Strait. Hit and miss around Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass. Watch for widespread convection possibilities again for the afternoon, and IFR conditions across a large area in the Gulf and including areas around the Misty Fjords, with MVFR elsewhere across part of southeast as we head into Saturday afternoon. Here's your past conditions, and as we look at your Friday, Anaktuvuk's probably going to start out around IFR, leaning over to MVFR conditions. Expect similar trends there for Adigan Pass, and once again repeating probably on Saturday there, with a little better chance of IFR sticking around into the afternoon for Saturday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions through most of the day, not expecting widespread convection, at least around this part of the Alaska Range. As we get toward Rainy Pass, chances are you're going to see more convective areas generally north of the pass, but probably not over the pass itself. Marginal conditions to start with some improvement through the day. Same goes for Windy Pass there. Isabel Pass looking for marginal conditions with improvement as the afternoon goes on through your Friday. Mentasta Pass, we will likely see a better chance of convection there, especially on the northern side, as you'll be a little bit closer to some of that warmer air there and bubbling up the clouds in the afternoon. MVFR to start your day. Tanita Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions developing or improving as we go through the day. The Portage Pass looking to hold around marginal conditions through most of the pass, and then eastward, westward into Cook Inlet, things look to be A-OK. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions. Again, Saturday looks to be down a little bit further into IFR. Here's your freezing levels, and you'll notice the warmer air is certainly building in across continental Canada, certainly to the west and into parts of the central and eastern interior. The level's now up around 4,000 feet, and that heat is pushing its way into the upper Kuskokwim and the YK Delta region, and really far west into the central and eastern Bering Sea. So the necessarily ingredients for at least some more convective type weather has certainly been building in there, but cold weather remains north of the Brooks Range, surface freezing line showing up there, and levels below 2,000 to 4,000 feet across parts of southeast, below 4,000 feet for south central and most of the Aleutian and Alaska chain. As you look at your icing potential, the best risk, or highest risk I should say, for at least something more than isolated moderate, considerable moderate out over the Gulf, anything above about 6,000 feet. And you get a little bit higher there as you get into the west, southwest, all the way up toward the Beaufort Sea coast and Prudhoe Bay and the Kuparuk Valley. Above about 8,000 feet. Widely scattered convection is possible once again, and southeast fairly covered up with isolated moderate icing risk potential there, generally above 6,000 feet as well. Here's the jet stream now. Several waves of low pressure all rotating around this wide area of kind of general trophy weather. The fast-moving river of air is really trying to work its way in across the North and West Pacific. That is keeping Alaska in a general state of unsettled weather there. At 9,000 feet, you can see that southeasterly flow. Southwesterly flow coming into southeastern Alaska. That'll produce some wetter weather as we go into the weekend. More of a continental flow moving across south central. Light winds across the north and the west coast. Low pressure there and high pressure out across the central and western Bering Sea. Light winds coming in from the north through the Bering Strait. You can see that pretty broad southerly flow across the Gulf. Wind speeds there 10 to 15 knots. Light winds across the interior. A northeasterly push moving across the Beaufort Sea there. Also notable. Turbulence will be limited below 4,000 feet and some chop up north, but watch for considerable moderate across southeast, south central, and parts of southwestern Alaska.
Astronomical distances.
Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Albury, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky tonight. Hey Dean, humor me. If you want to describe your height, what units of measure would you use?
I'd use feet and inches.
And if we wanted to measure the distance to the moon, what would we use?
I could use feet and inches, but using miles makes more sense.
How about the distance to the stars?
We use light years. Distances in space are so, well, astronomical that it's hard to wrap our brains around them. So we created new units of measurement to take us around the solar system and through interstellar space.
So let's take you to the moon, Jupiter, and beyond. Okay, we have our sky set up for the evening of May 26th at about 10:30 p.m. and we're facing southeast.
Every night this week, you'll see the waxing moon in the night sky. But on this night, the moon will be a waxing gibbous and appear at the feet of the constellation Virgo. Let's zoom in on the moon and get out our tape measure. On average, the moon is about 239,000 miles from the Earth. We can find out the precise distance to the moon anytime by bouncing lasers off the reflectors set up by the Apollo astronauts.
Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and company took 3 days to fly the 239,000 miles to the moon and 3 days to fly back. Our next stop is Jupiter. The largest planet is easy to find in the night sky all this week. Look southeast after dark and you can't miss it. Jupiter is super bright.
Jupiter, all right, I like that. Anyway, Jupiter is brighter than any other star in the nighttime sky. Only the planet Venus, and on rare occasions Mars, can be more dazzling.
This is a good week to aim a telescope at Jupiter where you can see several moons around it, some stripes on it, and maybe the great red spot, a giant hurricane on the planet. This week, Jupiter is about 410 million miles away. Now, that number is hard to picture, so when we're talking about distances in the solar system, astronomers use a different unit of measure, the astronomical unit, or AU. 1 AU is the average distance between the Sun and the Earth, so we're about 1 AU from the Sun in miles. That's 93 million miles.
So, since Jupiter is 410 million miles away, it is also about 4.4 AUs from us. AUs work great within the solar system. For example, we could say Saturn is about 10 AUs from the Sun, Neptune is about 30 AUs from the Sun, and Voyager 1, our farthest flung spacecraft, is a whopping 140 AUs from the Sun.
You may notice a little star next to Jupiter. That is one of my favorite stars to say out loud and fast. It's called Zubin Janubi, and it's the second brightest star in the constellation Libra the Scales.
Zubin Janubi is about 447 trillion miles from Earth, or almost 5 million AUs. We can measure the distance to Zubin Janubi in millimeters if we wanted to, but those numbers would lose all meaning.
Astronomers use light years as their unit of choice for measuring interstellar distances. A light year is the distance light travels in a year, roughly 5.8 trillion miles. So a light year is a distance like a mile or an AU.
And Zubin Janubi is a whopping 77 light years from Earth. It's by no means the farthest star you could see with the naked eye. That honor most likely goes to Dehne, the tail star of Cygnus the Swan, who you'll be learning more about this summer. Dehne is over 3,000 light years away. That means the light you see from Dehne left at around 1000 BC and is only now getting to your eyes. So this week, get outside to see the moon at 239,000 miles away.
Jupiter from 4.4 AUs away.
And Zubin Janubi at 77 light years away. And there's one more thing.
Yes?
I know you'll like this, James, but on the night of May 27th, the moon will cozy up to Jupiter and Zubin Janubi and make a cool
Conjunction!
It's all there when you
Keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time for a quick check of today's sea ice edge, and you'll notice the pack ice is still hovering very close to the Beaufort Seacoast. Remember when we were talking a couple days ago about this, that there was some multi-year ice that had been blown into the region, and we still have that north and easterly flow, so no suggestion that that has stopped or changed. We are seeing some changes along the Beaufort Sea coastline itself, though, with marginal ice developing. We can still see some ice that is lingering close to the Chukchi coast, and with that general north and easterly flow, some of this open water may fill in a little bit. Kotzebue Sound still looking at some higher concentration ice pack there, and also across the northern sections of the Seward Peninsula into the Bering Strait, but everything south remains generally open at this time. Here's a look at what we expect in southeast for your Friday. South and easterly flow picking up 25 knots with a 4-foot sea in Clarence Strait. Southerlies in the Lynn Canal up to 20 knots and an onshore push that really strengthens once you get north of Port Alexander to Sitka. About 10 to 25 knots there. 8-foot seas coming into parts of Cross Sound, and an easterly flow working away from Yakutat toward Prince William Sound. 25 to 30 knots, looking at 8 to 9-foot seas expected there. Really not a huge change in that region for Saturday. The easterlies continue. Seas don't change much, but you'll notice seas coming up here across the central and eastern Gulf, anywhere from 12 to 13-foot seas. Some areas could be higher towards 20-foot seas there. Offshore, though, of Sitka. Across the inside, you're looking at gusty winds developing in Stevens Passage up to 35 knots with a sustained wind around 20 knots, 4-foot seas there, and gusts up to 45 knots in Clarence Strait. 35 sustained with 8-foot seas, and again, a pretty wet period it looks like for most of southeast through the holiday weekend. 15 knots out of the north for Lynn Canal, though. At least that settles down. 3-foot seas expected on Saturday. For Friday, around south central, northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound, a 3-foot sea. Outside, you're looking at 8-foot seas across the northern Gulf, and north and easterly winds coming down Cook Inlet, 20 to 25 with 6 to 8-foot seas in the region, 20 knots around the western Barrens and outside of Kashamak Bay. For Saturday, light winds around Cook Inlet, only 10 knots or so, 2 to 3-foot seas, not too bad at all. Light winds, small seas for Prince William Sound, a good start to the weekend there. And north and easterlies across the northern Gulf, only 15 knots. You're expected to see 5 to 6-foot seas there for Saturday. Bristol Bay, expect northeasterlies up to 20 knots with a 4-foot sea. Stronger winds and higher seas in Shellicroft, up to 11-foot seas expected, with 6 to 7-foot seas across the north and western Gulf. Northerlies down the Bering Sea coast, 20 knots coming in with a 5-foot sea for some areas there along the Bering Sea coast. That comes up to 6 to 9 feet as we head into Saturday. Some stronger winds there coming out of parts of the eastern Bering. That continues across into the North Pacific. Otherwise, 15 knots and about 4 to 5 foot seas around areas near Kodiak Island for your Saturday. For the Bering Sea coast, northerlies will be stronger with the central and eastern chain. You're expected to see 5 to 6 foot seas there, 7 to 8 foot seas for the Pacific, and lighter winds, smaller seas out west, 10 to 15 knots with a 5 to 6 foot sea there. As we head into Saturday, expect a southerly flow across the west. Seas coming up to about 5 to 6 feet as the day goes on, and looking at 4 to 7 foot seas for the central and eastern chain. Strongest winds will be around Nikolsky to Unalaska, around 20 to 25 knots. Here's a look at Friday across the west coast. Northerlies still coming in. That's going to keep some areas of fog across the west coast. Watch for that. Otherwise, generally drier weather, 3 to 7 foot seas for many areas on a 15 to 20 knot wind out of the north. For your Saturday, a little bit of a northwesterly turn. Expect 20 to 25 knots in all areas. Some slower winds around the Norton Sound region, 3 foot seas there, and also around St. Matthew, expecting more of a westerly wind at 15 knots with a 3 foot sea. And for the north and easterlies blowing over the ice, 15 to 20 knots. Looking for an east and northeasterly flow coming around parts of Cape Lisburn into Point Hope. Northwesterlies moving into and onshore through Kotzebue Sound, 20 knots with a 4 foot sea. And northerlies around the Bering Strait, about 5 foot seas expected there for your Friday. As we get into Saturday, not a really big change. Easterlies across the Beaufort Sea, still looking at some of your higher seas and stronger winds around the Chukchi, 25 knots with 6 to 7 foot seas, and northwesterlies coming in through the Bering Strait, a 20 knot wind with a 4 foot sea expected there. Recapping tonight's weather, showers and thunderstorms are expected again across the interior. Some of these may bring some periods of heavy rain with them. We're also watching for a higher than normal flow across some of the interior riverways, including the Chena. You may find additional debris in there because of that. And on top of that, with the snow melt, you can expect that some river access points may not be accessible. So plan on some interruptions there over the holiday weekend. Across the north and eastern Gulf, expect periods of moderate to occasionally heavy rain, a better chance for some of that heavier rainfall into the weekend there. The central and southern parts of the Panhandle stand to see the greatest risk of that. Otherwise, more of the standard push into summer for the interior, widely scattering of showers and thunderstorms across the interior into southwest, and pockets of rain across the northern Gulf Coast.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.